Here at this meeting tonight, amazed at the truth of your word. Solomon wrote, Father, that a man plans his day, but the Lord directs his steps. And we're amazed at what has happened to our country and to our world in these last several weeks. We cannot control much of what is happening. We must trust you, Heavenly Father, with our daily safety. And so, Father, we give you thanks and praise for your abundant grace that enables each of us to be here this evening to attend this meeting. We're thankful for the measure of health that you have blessed our county with to this point. And Father, we submit that we are wholly dependent upon you and you alone. So Father, as we gather together again tonight, we thank you for the opportunity of public ministry. We thank you for the privilege of being entrusted with the business of our city, both the administration and the council. We thank you also, Father, for those in the public who could attend, and we pray, God, that your overweening wisdom will guide every discussion, every decision. We thank you, Father, most of all, for our Lord Jesus Christ. In his name we pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Veronica, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Marshall? Mr. Callis?
Here.
Mr. Penton?
Here.
Mr. Aigler?
Here.
Mrs. Murphy? Mr. Hellman?
Here.
Mr. Davis?
Mr. Davis is here. Just a note, based on the new COVID-19 rules, all of us are social distance 6 foot apart, at least as close as we can get. We are also able to live stream members in that have issues in their home life that prevent them from coming, small children, taking care of individuals that are at higher risk for COVID-19. So Mr. Davis is on a video chat with me. So if you guys can't hear him or the microphone can't hear him, I will reiterate what he says. I did get notes from Mr. Marshall and Mrs. Murgy that they were unable to come tonight, so I need a motion to excuse both of them.
I'll make that motion.
By Mr. Aigler, second by Mr. Hellman. Please call that roll.
Mr. Aigler?
Yes.
Mr. Hellman?
Yes.
Mr. Callis?
Yes.
Mr. Penton?
Yes.
Mr. Davis? Can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah, a little delayed. We'll be all right. Okay, everybody should have been I'm sorry, you can't hear Veronica?
I can hear Veronica when she rolls through everything, so you just have to kind of let me know I can hear you.
Okay, I'll prompt you, Andrew,
I'll speak up.
Perfect.
and she will speak up. Okay, everybody was presented an agenda for this evening's meeting. Are there any additions or corrections to the agenda for tonight? Hearing none. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda? Mr. Penton, second by Mr. Callis. Please call the roll.
Mr. Penton?
Yes.
Mr. Callis?
Yes.
Mr. Aigler?
Yes.
Mr. Hellman?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Mr. Davis.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Also, prior to this evening, everybody was presented the minutes from our last meeting dated March 9th, 2020. Are there any additions or corrections to those minutes? Hearing none, I have a motion to approve. Mr. Callis, Second by Mr. Penton. Please call the roll.
Mr. Callis?
Yes.
Mr. Penton?
Yes.
Mr. Igler?
Yes.
Mr. Hellman?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Mr. Davis on the minutes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Comments, communications, petitions. We have one group, Stacy Adams from Economic Development. So, Stacy, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I wanted to review with council an issue that we had from one of the revolving loan funds previous to, that was actually a city loan. In 2006, we're going to talk about 111 West Main Street in Van Wert. That property was purchased for $10,000. Later that year, in September of 2006, it was, there was a revolving loan fund that was issued in the amount of $50,000 on that property with a mortgage. In January of '09, the property was transferred to another party for $56,200, and they assumed the RLF balance on that property. 2 months later, there was a lien put on the property for $132, but in June of 2011, there was another lien from the Ohio Department of Commerce for $39,498. 2 months later, the city actually got the property back. So the person that had defaulted on their revolving loan fund lien transferred that property over to the city. 2 months later, the city transferred the property to the CIC with a warranty deed, and I believe the same day, yes, the same day, Mr. Hammond bought the property from the CIC. So the city gave the CIC a warranty deed. I'm not an attorney, so you correct me if I'm wrong, but that's saying the property is free and clear from any liens. Close enough?
Close enough.
The CIC then issued Mr. Hammond that same warranty deed. Mr. Hammond had a revolving loan fund for the purchase of that property. We held a mortgage on that property, and that property has since been paid for. The mortgage has been released. Mr. Hammond went to sell the property, and the person that was interested in the purchase isn't anymore until the lien that remains on the property is resolved. We have been working on this for several months. Mr. Hatcher actually has negotiated on behalf of the city, and that lien amount has been reduced from $39,000 to $11,000.
11.5.
$11,500. At the end of the day, there's still an $11,500 lien on that property, and Mr. Hammond can't sell the property. So I wanted to break, yes, sir?
So let me get this straight. We, the city of Van Wert, said that the property was free and clear.
Yes,
When
Transferred it to the CIC. The CIC then in turn said it was free and clear also when they sold it to Mr. Hammond.
correct.
yes,
And so we were wrong. Right?
yes,
What happened is when the property was received in 2011, these people had defaulted on their revolving loan and just deeded the property and lieu of any foreclosure action done by the city of Van Wert. What should have been done at that time is the city just should have went ahead and foreclosed. Because of all the complications and the other liens, just to clear the title of the property, but that, at that time, the city and the revolving loan fund did not do that.
Okay.
And I don't know if the law director at the time did not know that that other lien was out there, and that when he received a quitclaim deed, just went forward from that point. And when Mr. Hammond purchased it, Mr. Hammond, you purchased it without any bank or anything,
Correct.
without counsel, correct?
Correct.
And Mr. Hammond did not proceed to do a title exam when he purchased it.
Well,
What is
so
the
he was-
$39,000 lien? What is that?
It was a judgment against the previous owners to Brad for failing to pay minimum wage.
Oh,
It was a wage
oh.
action against
But-
them.
But to be honest, if I'm Mr. Hammond and the city is selling me something,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's justifiable for him to trust the city
John,
to sell him a property that is free and clear, right?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, yes. And just, and part of what I'm saying is when Brad, was involved in this, most people, when they buy something, they take out a mortgage from a bank, and the bank they do the title exam, because that's part of how they operate. When you deal with a private party like that, those things aren't always done. For better or for worse, it's just fact of life. But I agree with you, John, that at some point, when the city received the property, they should have known what they were getting.
Okay.
I
So,
got a comment. So, you went through the city revolving loan, didn't you?
Correct.
Well, they should have, that's shame on us if they loaned him the money on a building how's that any fault of his?
That's what I'm saying, is when the city received the property,
Yeah,
they
that's-
should have known what they were getting. And quite frankly, at the time, with all the complications and the multiple judgments that were against that owner, they should have just gone through a foreclosure action instead of taking the deed and say, because a lot of times when you say you're gonna foreclose and say, well, I'll just give it to you, fine, we took it. In this case, there should have been a peek behind the curtain, and what else is there? If they're just giving this to us, we should have looked a little deeper, and probably just should have foreclosed on the property if we were gonna take it back, is what we should have done.
so right now, Mr. Hammond is being
Held up.
held up, punished, because of something the city of Van Wert didn't do appropriately 10, however many years ago, 9 years ago.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, in order for Mr. Hammond to be able to sell the building, the state of Ohio needs $11,500. Is that correct?
Correct.
And it's certainly not appropriate for him to be held up in selling a building for a mistake that he didn't make. Do we have, I know if, Martha, if you make a mistake, you're covered under insurance, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do we have insurance under the law, is the law director covered under that policy too? A previous law director covered under that policy?
There is
an omission in our policy, but I couldn't answer you tonight, that's.
But can't this be paid out of revolving loan fund?
Well, somebody needs to write a check.
Yeah, and
It's either
and
gonna,
my question is, can't the revolving loan fund pay that? They're allowed so much in admin fees.
I think somebody needs to write, I don't care who it is, the revolving loan fund needs to write a check and then then sue the person that owes that money, I don't know the person's name. Or, because the city of Van Wert made a mistake, we can float $11,500 far better than an individual citizen can float $11,500, and then we can ask our law director to figure out, whether it's through an insurance claim, through a secondary lawsuit against the individual to
Somehow, somewhere.
recoup our $11,500.
Well, I'm guessing if the revolving loan fund was still administered by the city, we would pay that out of the revolving loan fund. I'm guessing.
Is there money in the revolving loan fund?
We're gonna talk about that in a second, and
Okay.
yes, there is. But again, I'm thinking it was the city law director. The revolving loan fund, they were default. The property was transferred to the city of Van Wert.
I don't,
The city of Van Wert law director gave the warranty deed.
I know you're not gonna answer you're not gonna know the question. You might have an opinion, but you never tell me what you think. You always hedge your bets in front of camera.
Thanks, man.
Honestly,
I need to know who should write the check, John. And you don't have to tell us now, but we need to get this figured out because this has been months on end
Yes.
Yes.
for Mr. Hammond.
You know,
Somebody needs to write a
something
check.
is- You used the word punished. At first, I thought that I was feeling punished at first. After a while, things happen for a reason. I talked to Mr. Hatcher here the other day, and I told him, if something happens, so we can put that 11,500 back on the individual, I don't mind waiting longer, okay? The only problem is I have some loans and stuff that I have to take care of by the end of May.
Okay.
So I am more than willing to work with you guys on figuring that out for, I don't know, 5-6 months. If I could get some money to pay off those loans,
We-
which rough
we can
estimate is like
certainly-
$18,000.
We can certainly pay the $11,000.
We need to do something.
We can do that
And then figure it
sort
out
it
amongst
yes,
ourselves.
Yes, because there's really no reason that he should have to wait.
It's-
Yeah,
no.
so, yeah, we can write that check and figure it out
So
later.
what do you need?
Well, we'll have to have an appropriation, and figure out where we're paying. I'm assuming we just paid out of the general fund.
Okay, so
Yeah.
between now and our next meeting, can you and John can facilitate that appropriation? And then we'll figure it out amongst ourselves. It's inappropriate for him to wait any longer on that money. So I think the next meeting, I'd like to see an appropriation for $11,500 to whomever, from whatever account is necessary. I don't really care. And then after the fact, as soon as Mr. Hammond is out of the picture and we've satisfied that, then we can
Figure out.
figure out where the money needs to go from. I mean, it's only appropriate. Is that,
I've been more than appreciative. The reason I came down here is because I just kind of wanted to say thank you to everybody that's helped out and put a lot of time into this. I mean, Mr. Hatcher's office, the revolving loan fund, the
Okay.
economic development, everybody's put a lot of time. I appreciate that because nobody knows what to do, so
well,
I just thank you.
we'll at least fix it for you, and then the problem will be
I
on
do
us.
appreciate that.
And then
And we'll figure out how to get
Yeah.
our money back. Mr. Jared?
I was just thinking, RLF is part of what was economic development back then, right?
Yeah.
The RLF was
It was-
part of the city administration.
It was housed
Yeah.
under the city.
What- I mean,
Wouldn't it?
The CIC, it was first sold to the CIC.
Wouldn't it also make sense to use part of, if there is surplus of the hotel motel tax, to use part of that as well?
No.
Or no? It wouldn't?
And we're not allowed to use, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, well, yeah.
We'll figure it out. We can handle not having 11,500 a lot easier than an individual
Well,
citizen.
we say that today.
We will handle it. We will handle it.
Yeah.
And then we'll use our resources to get the money back from somebody. There's no reason for him to wait any longer.
John, was that back when we had two? When we had two?
no, it was the law director immediately preceding me.
No, he's
Yes, he
two,
did.
Yeah, we had
loan
two
funds.
remember we had
Two loan
Sean?
funds.
Yes.
No, we had Sean, was our,
No,
we had two law
No,
directors.
it was after that, yeah, Jeff, it was after that.
Okay.
Yeah, that was probably back in 2008 or 9, and this was 2011.
I thought that's what you said, it was 2009.
Well, but the property was deeded back to us in 2011.
a mistake happened, and we need to fix it for the citizen, and we will do that.
Absolutely.
We will do that. I do need to make a note, Joy Murgy is now on, so just, we don't need to change anything, just make a note in the minutes that she came on a few minutes late due to technology issues. Okay, Stacy, you had one other thing you wanted to
I just
mention?
have one other thing very quickly, and I just wanted to share this information. A week ago, we reached out to Ohio Development Services. That's who administers the revolving loan fund for the state of Ohio. And we knew that we were gonna have businesses that were impacted from all of the coronavirus mandates. We asked them to consider revisions to the guidelines, the job requirements that you have to have for the revolving loan fund. On Friday afternoon, they provided a new set of guidelines. I had a conference call with our board today, and we are going to immediately be accepting working capital loans from local small businesses to try and get them through over the short term, until hopefully Congress can resolve their issues and get their phase 3 stimulus package in place, which includes the small business disaster loans and the business loans. So we are gonna have, we are going to allocate all the remaining money that we have and make that available based on the new guidelines that we got on Friday. We also have requested additional allocations. I'm not sure whether or not we'll get that, but people can call our office. The phone is forwarded to my cell, or they can go to info@vanwerted.com. And we will do everything electronically or over the phone to get that done and provide some short-term relief to folks.
Good.
Thank you.
All right. Any questions for Stacy?
Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy. Thank you, Brett.
Thank you, guys, I appreciate it. I'm gonna socially distance myself.
All the way home?
Yeah. Thanks again, everybody.
I do have one note. I have two, actually. I got an email from Vicky Schulte from the Peony Festival. She noted that she dropped her F permit off at the water department. Did administration get that?
Yes.
Okay. And then I have an email from, I received this email, others in here received the email. It is from Andy McMahon, Haven of Hope. He is referencing the stay-at-home order. And I will read this. I will read it from the stay-at-home order, not his email. This is from Governor DeWine and Dr. Acton, and it is dated today, I think, or maybe yesterday. It is under Section 1, Paragraph 2. It says stay-at-home or place of residence. I'm going to read this paragraph, and then I'm going to read you portions of Andy's email. It says, individuals experiencing homelessness are exempt from this order, the stay-at-home order, but are strongly urged to obtain shelter, and here's what he's going to reference. Governmental and other entities are strongly urged to make shelter available as soon as possible and to the maximum extent practicable, and to use in their operation COVID-19 risk mitigation practices recommended by the U.S. CDC and the Ohio Department of Health. This order does not apply to incarcerated individuals. They are to follow the guidelines of the facility in which they are confined. Individuals whose residents are unsafe or become unsafe, such as victims of domestic violence, are permitted and urged to leave their home and stay at a safe alternative location. For purposes of this order, homes or residences include hotels, motels, shared rental units, shelters, and similar facilities. So Andy's question says the recent ODH, Ohio Department of Health Director's Order states on, and then he says it, is there any, his question to us, is there any way we can work together to get a shelter for the homeless going, even if it is only temporary? Can we discuss options at this time, or does the lawsuit prevent it? So, you were CC'd on that email, I
I
believe.
was.
A pending lawsuit, does that stop everything that we potentially can do?
No, it doesn't. Now, obviously, you know, the pending lawsuit is based on a decision made by council.
Yes.
Okay. We have an intervening action here with the virus outbreak, with everything that's gone on, the health directive orders, et cetera. So I believe council could be inclined to do something if they chose to. I don't think the lawsuit precludes them. Now, obviously, you
Do
have...
something, that's lawyer speak for, overturn the original decision, even if it's temporary.
That means, that's one.
Council's original decision.
That's one. Another is an alternative location, not, it doesn't have to be that location. If there was an alternative location presented to council, for them to deliberate and potentially approve,
Okay.
okay? So when I say that, I'm not trying to be coy, John. I'm trying to say there's more than one, there's more than one answer. And I mean that, you know, sincerity. You have the location that we've all been bandying about since November. But there are potentially, another location could be provided as a possibility. And then there's also a myriad, and you know, for, you know, full disclosure, Mr. McMahon did contact my office today. There's a myriad of other things that aren't under the control of council. You know, the health department regulations, which are much more stringent right now because of what's going on.
Right.
So finding locations where you could even do this, you know, maybe the location they have in mind, it may not meet those factors. Okay, so it may not even be a possibility. And you know, you still have fire code provisions, you know, anything going on. This is a building that's under construction. I'm not even sure that it would pass a fire inspection.
Okay, but that.
I mean, there's a lot of factors I do.
So
Correct.
Even if it can't pass a fire inspection and can't pass the health department inspection, none of that matters because council has determined that it's not allowed to be there, pending a lawsuit.
Council has determined that that location is not suitable under zoning. So
And that precludes everything else.
I would say you would be awfully inconsistent including that property. If another property was brought to you, sure.
I would say that's a terrible idea to put it in the Haven Hope building right now.
Whether or not it's a good idea, I don't, like,
That's just a whole can of worms.
I agree. I agree that the problem's
This is-
presented by that.
This is, you know, all I'm doing is communicating the information that I received from a member of the public.
Right.
You know, council doesn't have to do anything other than listen to that communication.
Yeah.
That's, this is the comments communications. Council has already decided.
But also coming from Mr. DeWine's office, like, we kind of have to do something, don't we? Or not?
It says that we can, it doesn't say that we have to. Yeah.
They suggest that we do, though.
They suggest if there's something available. Now, something available doesn't have to be the Haven of Hope building.
Right.
Now, let me make that clear. I mean, other options can be presented.
Sure.
You can make it clear that that building, because of everything that we've done and the precedent we've set, is just something that you guys don't want to relitigate in council. And that's fine.
It specifically says to the maximum extent practicable, is what his order says.
Yes.
So, I guess any comments, questions from council?
Do we know if Haven of Hope has a different temporary location in mind, but that might have the same zoning issues that to the one we already voted on?
To my knowledge, nothing else has been suggested.
Yeah. His email, and I'm not want to put words in his mouth, but his email says, is there any way we can work together to get a shelter for the homeless, even if it is only temporary? The answer to that alone is yes, but council has already decided at this point that physical location is not appropriate.
Yeah.
That's what council decided when they overturned, or when they upheld the zoning board of appeals decision.
For better or for worse.
I understand, so we don't know if Haven of Hope has an alternate location that they're
No.
considering. And the second part of that, if it has the same type of zoning issues as the present Haven of Hope, do we need something from Haven of Hope's attorney that they will not use that as evidence in the lawsuit? To the
I think
city
under,
council's position?
well, I would say this, I would feel comfortable arguing under the extraordinary circumstances with which we're living in currently, that they're not the same thing. Okay,
I agree with you, but rather than providing a chance, it'd be nice if they just said they wouldn't bring it up.
Well,
They won't.
I'm just saying, I wouldn't expect that kind of response. And I don't know, I could ask, but I wouldn't expect it. But, like I said, with the Ohio Department of Health order urging, municipalities to do such a thing, under these extraordinary circumstances, I wouldn't feel it'd be overly difficult to defend that position if there was a suitable alternate location for the city to consider, and they considered it. And they did something with it. I would not feel like I was at a disadvantage in a courtroom argument because of what's going on now. It's easy to differentiate what happened, what's happened previously to what's going on now.
I mean, I guess taking Haven of Hope out of the equation, do we feel like we should try to help the homeless and put them somewhere on our own and take the initiative? Because there's obviously a problem in town. Like,
Who would run that?
I don't know.
I got a
I
question.
don't know what that looks like.
Hold on. The mayor had his hand up
Well,
first.
it's sort of what they were asking, and you did. I did talk to Andy today, and because, the order just came out yesterday, they didn't have a lot of time. I do believe he is looking for other places that might be suitable for this temporary. If they find another building, that's not the building they want, the building they have, so anything else they might have would be temporary. Whether it's something that's been used in the past, or some new location that someone hadn't thought of yet, I think they are still exploring options.
Martha?
Do we know of all the buildings that the foundation has purchased, how many of them had apartments in them at one point in time? I know there have been a number of apartments in upstairs buildings, old buildings. Whether they've been lived in recently, I do not know. But I'm just wondering if all these buildings that the foundation now owns, if some of them don't have areas that could be made into temporary living. And since the foundation seems to have more money than God, perhaps they could be asked if there's something that they can do to help.
I'll get to you, but Mr. Davis has a comment. Hold on, Andrew, let me turn up my volume here so hopefully everybody can hear you. You're up whenever you want.
Okay, I just want to make sure, I can't hear everybody real well, but I think I've got the gist of what's going on. I just want to make sure that there's anything that we do here, whatever our next step is in this process. Obviously, I think it's something that needs to be handled. It's something that needs to be handled quickly. That way, if there is somebody that's in need, we have an option for them, and we're doing everything that we can to put that in front of them. Obviously, we want to make sure the city's liability in any of this, in any property they go into or attempt to go into, we don't know what the building's gonna look like or whatnot. We obviously know the building that they're currently looking at isn't an option, but wherever they do go, we need to make sure it's monitored and we know what's going on. Just shooting something in and saying, here's a place to come crash for the night, it doesn't necessarily, we've got to make sure there's parameters in place as well. If even for the short term to get through this crisis, we still got to make sure that we're doing our due diligence on that as well.
Okay. Thank you, Andrew. Mr. Jared, you had a hand up?
Yes. The lawsuit is probably going to be a victory for them. And this offers a cushion. State level government saying it's a health hazard for homeless people during this time. I haven't heard one dictionary reference to the word philanthropic. But by the definition, in the dictionary, what Haven of Hope is doing is philanthropic. It's an opportunity to reconsider whether or not what they're doing is philanthropic. Would probably mitigate any lawsuit. Matter of fact, I'd be more inclined to think they would just drop it for a cost. I think what they're doing is right for this city. It was right before the crisis. It's definitely right now. I'm helping somebody myself on the first floor because I can't use the second floor. But I'm not going to risk more than one person on my family's health. I think what they can do is right by this city and get at least the homeless men into a place where they can have shelter, probably a little bit longer than they would desire because of stay-at-home orders. They'd have to house them long-term. But I think that they would do right by the city and probably incur less of a wrath from the government, from the governor, I mean. But I believe that council made a wrong decision, and I believe that left unchecked, the city will pay for that wrong decision.
Any other comments?
Is
Questions?
Haven of Hope going to administer the admission and
Right. I'm not.
homeless people?
We've already heard from Haven of Hope all of their intentions. I don't have any other information than that.
Yeah,
I'm
email was
passing
already
on
sent,
information.
yeah.
I'm passing on information as comments, communications, and petitions. Okay. The only thing that can change right now that this council has control over is if council decides that they want to reconsider the decision to overturn the zoning board of appeals. That's the only thing that we can do. So, aside from hearing a motion to that extent, are there any other comments, communications, or petitions to come before council this evening? Yes,
Can I have one?
absolutely.
All right.
To the floor.
So I wrote it down so I don't stumble over my words. Per the governor's orders, only essential businesses are to stay open starting tonight at midnight. Those who do stay open must adhere to social distancing rules, provide PPE, and ensure that all employees are not coming to work sick by doing things like checking their temperature of employees that enter before they enter the facility. According today to both Governor DeWine and Lieutenant Governor Husted, essential businesses that are not adhering to these orders are to be considered unsafe and should not remain open even if they are essential. Personally, I've had probably almost 100 people reach out to me about unsafe things that their businesses are doing. I know for a fact that at least some factories in this community are not following those rules. Of course, until today, it was strongly suggested to do those things. Tomorrow, it will be a rule. So on behalf of those citizens, I am wondering what obligation the city council has to making sure that the workers in their city are safe, if any.
Go ahead, Jeff.
We met about that today before the governor's afternoon press conference. Law enforcement's aware, and I gotta tell you the answer right now, as I haven't talked to the chief or the sheriff, we probably will meet on this again tomorrow, but it's still unclear what the governor wants us to do with it. And to be perfectly honest, I think I'm speaking for them to think that we're gonna try to police this county and with all the other things going on and deal with that, we just don't know how we can do that. I mean, so we're gonna, I know there are gonna be discussions tomorrow, because it did change today, and we've not gotten back together yet, so.
Yeah, my main concern is, especially in the factories, I've heard from numerous people on every factory in this community that, I mean, it's hard for them, they can't keep that 6 foot distance, but if they can't, then they are unsafe.
But I thought the governor said 6 feet or as close as you can come to that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he realizes that if they're gonna keep in production, they can't maintain 6
There's-
feet, but they need to do
Yeah, but
whatever
there's
they
al-
can.
There's also a little bit of personal responsibility here too. Yeah, if you, this will sound harsh, then that's just my personality. If you feel unsafe, you don't have to go to work.
A lot of them are being threatened, from what I've heard, and that's another issue.
Now, if, you know, that's not a city of Van Wert police enforcement situation. That goes higher. That goes to the state level agencies if they're being threatened or anything like that. So I would recommend that rather than, and I may be speaking out of turn and I may contradict what Jay says, I would not contact the city of Van Wert Police Department or the Van Wert County Sheriff Department. I would contact the state of Ohio if they are experiencing any types of situations or they believe that their health is endangered. Mr. Penn?
Question, if, does the city council have the right to bring the zoning issue up again and vote on it again?
Absolutely.
And if the decision that we made was reversed, would that comply with the governor's directive by telling Haven of Hope, yeah, they can operate?
Yes. In my opinion, it would.
I would
If it passes all the codes and all that, right?
Yeah, basically
put it back in their, ball in their court.
if I were to hear a motion and a second to overturn the zoning board of appeals decision, and John, please, Mr. Hatcher, please jump in if I'm stating anything wrong. We would remove the city of council zoning roadblock from Haven of Hope. Then it would be up to Haven of Hope to get all of the other permits. You know, the fire permit, the Department of Health permit, or all of that stuff. That's all then in their court. It would also be up to Haven of Hope to make sure that the number of people they're housing in that building would comply with the order. So they wouldn't be able to have 30 people in there. They would have to have less than, the stated 10 for non-essential businesses. They would also have to comply with if they would need personal protective gear, gloves, masks. They would also need to maintain social distancing within that building. So all of the responsibility would then be on Haven of Hope. But right now, what's happening is City Council's decision to uphold the Zoning Board of Appeals is the end-all, be-all right now.
I understand. I just want to make sure of one thing, Mr. Hatcher.
Yes, sir.
Probably your, if we take a vote and the city council does decide to reverse it, is that going to become ammunition for Haven of Hope to use in some kind of punitive lawsuit against the city for the original decision not to
Well, first of all,
reverse it?
the only claim they have pending right now is an appellate action in the common pleas court. There is no punitive action pending.
Okay.
And I think if they tried to file something in federal court after the fact, I think they would say that was moot, and that probably wouldn't get very far in federal court.
Okay.
Now, procedurally, whether, on our ability to reconsider, I would like to look into that to make sure if that was something that council members really want to do, let me take a look at that, make sure if we do it, make sure we do it procedurally, we don't trip over ourselves on that issue.
Can we do a vote now and then you decide, you research it and, because of the governor's order that it be done right away, is all I'm thinking of.
Well, there's two tracks you can take. One is permanent, one is temporary because of the governor's, the Board of Health directive, okay? I think, the Board of Health directive on a temporary basis is one thing, and I would, if you're looking at something to reconsider, that makes more sense. A, it's temporary, B, because of the Board of Health and the governor's directives on that issue, okay? Because the law likes finality of judgments when you take things up on appeal, I don't know what kind of place we're in on filing a motion to reconsidering the final decision with an appellate lawsuit pending. I don't know if that's just, I really want to look into that. That does not make me feel comfortable that that's even a possibility.
But it would be safe to do it temporary.
Safe and possible. I don't know if I've just used the word safe. Okay? Is it possible? Yes. I don't know if safe is a matter of opinion. It's a matter of perspective.
Mr. Jared and I don't often agree. Okay? Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. But I did agree with his statement earlier. And I think what you're trying to get at, Joel, is are we permitted as council to overturn the zoning board of appeal on a temporary basis during the length of the COVID-19 situation?
That's what I'm driving at.
My answer to that's yes.
And I believe we are, and we could say we're going to do it on a, council could determine that as long as the COVID-19 situation is ongoing, we're going to say that Haven of Hope can classify or can open in that building once the COVID-19 situation goes away and we go back to normal, and that'll be determined by the state of Ohio and higher up, then it goes back to they have to go to court. Veronica?
Are they gonna be able to get all the permits needed?
Well, that's up to them.
That's up to them.
Oh.
That's completely on them. What Joel's talking about
I
is
understand that.
removing us as a roadblock, the
Okay.
city council as a
I understand
roadblock.
that. I just,
All right. I would move that we consider city council, move that Haven of Hope be able to operate temporarily in that location as long as the COVID virus situation exists until lifted by the State Health Department.
Okay?
I'll second that.
We have a first and a second on, just to make sure, on allowing Haven of Hope to open and operate at their North Market Street location during the COVID-19 situation. Correct?
Yes.
Well, that's my first and second.
Is this discussion?
As soon as I get clarification that that's what you
Yes.
two are, okay, now we have discussion. Okay, Mr. Jared.
Haven of Hope is putting their money as contributed to them into this project. What you're saying is for about 2 months, they can do what they're doing, and then it's gonna have to start all over again. That's what you're basically saying. It's not gonna last beyond summer.
Well, that's
I mean, that's the
And-
risk they're gonna have to take.
a
No,
decision,
right.
that's a
It's a
decision
lot-
that they're gonna make.
It's a liability the city won't have to spend money on if we get out of their way. So if they're gonna put the money into it and get it going, make it permanent.
Well, that's,
The problem.
I have a first and a second, Mr. Jared.
Can I respond to Mr. Jared
Yeah.
quickly? I understand what you're saying, Mr. Jared, and from a practical standpoint, I do. From a legal standpoint, the appeal is already pending, okay? And that's why they asked me whether they go back and vote on that on a permanent basis. I don't think you can. I don't think you could go back and, Pardon?
No dictionary in here?
Now, this is open comment, okay? I have a first and a second that we will vote on after other comments. Mr. Mayor.
Question and comment. So even if this passes, since they know it's temporary, would you predict their likelihood is they will proceed looking for the permanent solution that they seek?
I would think, yes.
Most likely, they're not going to put on hold, probably. So then, okay.
I don't think they plan on doing that now.
Another comment, if this passes, they still might not use that building if it's not ready.
Correct.
Correct.
For example, well, it wasn't Haven, but it was some of the same people that opened the Knights of Columbus Hall during the cold snap we had for a few nights.
Mhm.
It's possible they may decide that's a better place for this temporary situation. So you're not really saying that building is going to be used. The motion just says.
Can be.
They can.
As long as it meets everything in the order according to the health department.
But then the ball's, that's their responsibility. Jay?
I just recommend that the motion contains some language that says upon receiving applicable occupancy permits. So that this doesn't appear to be some blanket statement because of this COVID thing that they can just open tomorrow. Because there's
Okay.
still things that have to be attended to for public safety.
Okay.
Reasonable, I'm agreeable to add that to the motion.
Okay.
You still have to second that, because it's an addition.
Mr. Callis, second the addition of the information that they have to maintain, or have to obtain all other occupational permits and licenses.
And at the conclusion of the vote, I have another question. Let's vote.
Well, are there any other questions? Okay, Mr. Davis, are you up to, have you heard everything, or at least everything that the motion and the second?
I think I'm as up to speed as I'm gonna be.
Well, basically, I'll.
Give me what.
So there's a motion by Mr. Penton on the floor to allow Haven of Hope to temporarily open and operate the North Market Street location pending their receipt of all other occupancy permits and licenses that would be needed. We're basically removing the city count, we're overturning on a temporary basis city council's decision to uphold the zoning board of appeals. That temporary basis goes away when the state of Ohio Department of Health determines that the COVID-19 situation is gone. Okay? You have any questions?
Okay. I guess for definition's sake, do we need to come up with I know we said the state of Ohio, do we need to determine what the end of this is gonna look like as far as the, when the state of emergency is rescinded, or do we need to come up with a solid time frame when this would end?
I don't know. We can't come up with, that's a definition that we can't get. Nobody knows when it's gonna end.
Right, but I'm saying, do we need to put when the state of Ohio lifts the state of emergency?
I think so.
I mean, we can put the word temporary in there, but without a defining point of
Okay.
of what ends that. We need to have something that
You already said that, didn't
defines
you?
what the end is in there to make it, come to an end.
So that's a good question. Hold on, Mr. Mayor.
Another option is you could pick whatever you want whenever something else is allowed to reopen, if there was something comparable. I mean, not everything got closed at the same time. It's not necessarily going to reopen in reverse order, but if you so chose.
You could say the termination of the stay-at-home order. Because that's what this is.
Okay.
It's the order which this came out of.
So the suggestion is to this temporary reinstatement ends with the termination of the stay-at-home order from the governor's office.
There we go. As long as there's something there that defines what the end of it's gonna be, I think that's sufficient.
So, are you, okay, second, Mr. Callis? Okay, any other questions, comments?
Is Mrs. Margie still there?
Mrs.
Joy is no longer on here.
Joy is no longer on.
Joy is not on here.
Mr. Marshall is actually watching live. He sent me a text message with his vote. I don't know if that's permitted,
Okay, yeah, okay.
but I'll tell you what his vote is when his name comes up, Veronica. So Veronica, please call the roll.
Mr. Penton?
Yes.
Mr. Callis?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
He said yes, yes, yes.
Mr. Igler?
No.
Mrs. Margie? Oh,
She's unable.
she's gone. Mr. Hellman?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Mr. Davis, your vote?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So, Haven of Hope is permitted to, assuming they get all the other occupational permits and everything they need from other agencies, Haven of Hope is permitted to operate at, on North Market Street on a temporary basis during the governor's stay-at-home restriction.
And can we ask that those documents be supplied to us as well, the permits and such?
No, that's not, administration will take care of it. Mr. Mayor?
Communication to Andy.
Okay.
I'm assuming, I'll allow you to communicate with Andy.
Okay.
So it passed on a temporary basis.
Yes, it did.
Okay, my question is, even though there's a lawsuit pending, could Haven of Hope come back to council and say, we ask that you make the temporary order permanent? Which would be overruling your.
Can they ask?
Can they, is that procedurally?
I'm not sure, that's,
All right.
I would,
Will you research that for us?
we have 3 weeks to the next council meeting, I will have an answer for you for that.
I mean, they can ask
My gut,
at any point, but I don't know if we're.
my
allowed to
gut
do
tells
it.
me no, but my gut's been wrong.
I just want to know if they can.
Yeah, I understand. I understand.
Mr. Jared, you had one last comment here?
Based on this decision, I assume that Haven of Hope still has to continue the appeal, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
As of right now.
they are apples and oranges. They're two separate things.
They should win.
Well,
That's
why they're appealing.
why they're appealing.
Okay.
That's their right.
Any other comments, communications, and petitions? Administrative reports, Mayor, Mr. Ken Markwood.
Thank you, Mr. President. An ordinance request, Ms. Regler. Last time, we talked in executive session about adjusting the salary ordinance for the non-bargaining members. If you would ask just to have that prepared tonight, then Martha can get the numbers to John and he can have something ready for you to look at next time. Another one for streets and alleys. The party shop has relocated their entrance to Shannon Street. You may have seen a drawing of it where there was a loading zone and there's space there. At their request, we'd like to switch that to 2 15-minute parking spots. And so if you're so inclined, you could ask for that to be prepared and introduced tonight. And then the Peony Festival folks have submitted their F permit, and we don't see any problem with it, but I wanted to mention it to you because through the years, as they, this will be their 4th year, I believe, and they've moved it about to try to make things better. And among other reasons, they are not expecting art projects from the school students this year, and they would like to relocate the distribution site in the grass, which would be different. So just so you would know, if you had thought it was always going to be on the street and you didn't like that, this would be a good time to bring that to our attention, because otherwise, all the rest of the paperwork is in order and we were inclined to approve it. So
So,
let's think about that. Oh, go ahead.
just to be clear, that means it would move from the street to physically in the park.
Yes.
Okay. I'm just,
Kind of, yeah, down.
clarification for everyone.
Kind of down the hill from the fountain, down up, just off of that pavement there, sidewalk. So while you think about that for a little bit, since there's 5 Sundays, or 5 Mondays, so our next council meeting will be 3 weeks. Hopefully, things will be settled down, but just in case, I don't know if you were gonna mention this, but you might wanna consider rescheduling the special meeting we had for April 6th. So I'll leave that with you for now. And there are many things tied to this, and you probably got forms in the mail. Don't forget to fill out your census paper. And anything you wanted to add about that F permit?
It's just for new, when we changed the rules, we said any city-owned property. So anybody can request, it's up to this point, it's been in the street, but it's the same process and the same application process and the same rules to be inside it, on a city park. The city obviously owns the street and the park.
And as an example, Town Creek Live used Central Avenue, the Fall Festival, I can't remember their exact name, they were using a portion of Main Street.
Harvest Moon.
Harvest Moon.
Harvest Moon used
And so if you
the
weren't,
courthouse street.
I mean, if you
I forget what it's called.
If you thought your intention was that it would always remain on pavement, then that's not what it says. It says on city property.
Yeah.
And so that is part of city property. That's all I have.
Okay, any questions from council for the mayor? From the public? Mr. Jerry?
When is that F permit supposed to be in use?
You mean the day, June 6th, I believe? I would
It'd be the first weekend in
think
June.
it's,
Let's cut it real close. I think we'll be knee-deep in other issues.
Well, that's,
well, paperwork
But that-
has to be filed.
that's neither here nor there really right now. I mean, you can't just stop planning assuming things are gonna be bad. Okay. Safety Service Director, Mr. Jay Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just want to report that at this point, we're considering all of our employees to be essential. We've asked them to monitor temperatures and health conditions before they come to work. Let me know if there's issues, and we do have a few issues that we're working through with employees and particularly children. So we're proceeding ahead with that, and that's working well so far. Just to let you know, we've had 2 meetings, and then probably we haven't set up an official schedule. Rick McCoy has not activated the EMA yet, or the EOC, which is part of the EMA, that's the Emergency Operations Center. And I think he fully intends to do that if we do get a case in the county, a confirmed case in the county, but we don't have that yet. But it's a coalition now of EMA, fire, PD, sheriff, health department, and hospital staff that are working together to understand and try to find direction for what we're going through in the community. And that's all I have to report.
Any questions from council for the Safety Service Director? From the public? Thank you, Jay. Auditor, Mrs. Martha Dahlia.
Tonight, we need to pass the final appropriations that need to be finalized. We need to have permanent appropriations passed by April 1st. Previously, I'd sent you all the first round draft showing all the changes from the temporary budget that we passed. And then Friday, I sent you out the final changes from that point with, I think, most of the changes highlighted that were made from that original draft. I would suggest that we go ahead and add to this the $11,500 for the revolving loan issue, and I would add that to council under other operating, because I don't know where else to put it. That way, we won't have to do a supplemental appropriation for that again. So, I guess if anybody has any questions, I gave you
Where's that?
tonight,
Okay, so that's
The
under
le-
7140,
yes,
line Oh, 53? So that would change
Yes.
that to 48, 150,
Sounds about right.
right?
Yep.
So
What I gave to you tonight was the level at which council approves the budget. What I sent to you Friday was the actual lines. So.
With the highlights
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
Google
and that,
Docs.
yeah. But council actually only approves on the levels, personal services, fringe benefits, and other operating.
Okay. Mr. Egler, you have
So
a
we've
question?
decided it won't, this money can't come out of the revolving loan fund, 11,000?
Well, I think,
No, we haven't decided that. We've decided we're gonna pay it and figure that out later,
yeah, we're gonna
So
get
we can
it,
get it reimbursed
maybe.
from.
we may be able to work
Okay.
out
All right,
getting it
okay.
reimbursed, or there may be an insurance policy that we could
Yeah, I
go
don't-
after. We're absorbing the cost so that Mr.
Upfront.
Hammond doesn't have to.
Yeah.
Then we
Well,
will
well,
operate,
I personally think it's gotta come out of the revolving loan fund.
and that'll be determined later, but this is simply just to
Who
get it.
will determine that?
Well, that would be, between the law director, the auditor, and the administration of the revolving loan fund.
Yeah, I'm not real sure. I originally thought it was the fault of the revolving loan fund administration.
Well, it has to be.
Well, I don't think so.
I think it's the.
I don't think so.
I think it's
From-
previous law
after I-
director.
Yeah, after I looked at her timeline, I don't think it was the revolving loan administration. I think it
I-
was after it was out of their hands that it happened.
When I reviewed the dates and the material, I think it was the fault of the city of Van Wert, i.e. the law director for the city of Van Wert.
But that's what we need to look into.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Neither
and
here
the-
nor there.
And we can maybe go after the previous owner, I don't know.
Well, yeah,
Oh, that's always a possibility.
yeah, but,
But I think the one's dead, so,
Yeah.
the one previous owner,
so,
whatever.
so when we vote under resolutions and ordinances, do we have to amend that for any?
This is just put as an attachment.
Okay,
To
so
that,
you'll amend
so
it and
I'll-
add
yeah,
it and give it to Veronica to add.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, well, and a couple things that we did add to the budget that we didn't, you might be interested in. If you noticed, we have $1,000 going to the Humane Shelter. They've asked us for $1,000 for 3 years. We used to have a $3,000 to $4,000 a year expense for animal control, so their request for $1,000 we thought was more than reasonable. Under the Parks Department, we needed to, with my new software, I failed to put in the maintenance workers for the Parks Department, so we had to add that. You'll notice there's 4 different places where it says financial reports. I've always prepared the city's financial reports. This year, I've hired that out. Because of changes in government accounting, I decided I can no longer do them, and so I'm
Yep.
paying someone to do them. We had some street department things that were, well, and one of the things we added was the bonds for the HVAC system. Street department had some things that we needed to add for Bonowitz Grill Kier project. Is that reconstruction or?
Reconstruction next year.
And we needed to add some more money to the Market Street Bridge project. Jubilee Park is gonna get some batting cages, and that's a joint project between the city and the Lions Club, which we pay it up front, and they're gonna reimburse us for half of that. And those are really the only big changes. I did have a big change on a health reimbursement in the water department. I've had two employees already reach their maximum, which the way we budget that, we don't assume very many people will meet their maximum, but we've had 2 already in that department, so I upped that one. That's the major changes. Any other questions? Okay, so that needs to be passed, and then we also, I have an invoice that needs to be passed on a then and now. The invoices to Squire, Patton, Boggs, that's the legal firm that did the work for the issuing of the HVAC bonds. And since they gave me an invoice before the appropriation was available, I could not do a purchase order for it, so that needs to be approved as on a then and now so I can pay them. And that is all I have.
Okay, any questions from council for the auditor? From the public? Thank you, Martha. Law Director, Mr. John Hatcher.
Thank you. My report will be brief. So you know, the courts are open. They are considered essential employees, as are any person who provides legal services. But you will find most private attorneys' doors are locked, and they will be doing most, if not all, appointments by phone. You only will get a face-to-face pretty much if you're signing documents at this point. The courts have some very strict measures. You know, some courts in some counties will have a list at their security office of who is supposed to be there. That includes attorneys. That's attorneys and parties, and if your name's not on the list, you're not allowed in the building. So if you have any legal cases pending, this is a message to the public at large, contact your counsel or contact a court administrator by phone or email and find out if your hearing has been turned into a telephone hearing, because most civil cases have, if not been moved altogether. If it's a criminal case and it's a pretrial, it's not a trial or a motion hearing of some kind, again, contact your counsel, contact the court, find out if your case has been turned into a telephone pretrial and what details would go on with that. I mean, we're kind of moving, moving with the flow, and things we're kind of making it up to some degree as we're going along here, but we're trying to make sure that everybody's rights are taken care of. But anybody who's involved in the legal system, I strongly suggest to you, because there's so much up in the air, that you take a little bit of control yourself and you make sure you know what's going on. Don't assume that everybody else is taking care of you. Just be a little more vigilant, pay attention, and respect the rules that are being put into place. They're not there to try and harm you. They're there to try and keep everybody healthy. That's all I have. Thank you.
Any questions from council for the law director? From the public? Mr. Jared?
I know that's right. Can we recite what was the exact vote with respect to, what the content of the vote with respect to Haven of Hope? Is that possible?
You mean who voted what?
No, what the content of the vote was, exactly. Something.
It was to temporarily, I'm sorry, do you have that, Veronica?
Allowing Haven of Hope to open and operate during the COVID-19 situation, as long as they obtain all other occupation and permits needed, and that is upon termination of the stay-at-home order of the state.
Didn't that terminate on the 6th?
As of right now. That could easily be extended.
That decision really doesn't mean much.
Well,
That's the decision that council made.
yeah.
Okay. Committee reports, Health, Service, and Safety, Mr. Bill Marshall is not here, and I don't remember who the vice chair is.
He didn't text you a report?
Who's the vice chair? Mr. Penton, you have my sheet, I think.
For which committee?
Health, Service, and Safety.
Steve Hellman is vice chair and Jeff Egler is member.
Okay. Do you have a report?
I do not have.
Okay, no report. Any questions for Health, Service, and Safety can be directed to me. Economic Development, Mr. Jeff Callis.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have no report tonight.
Okay. Any questions for Economic Development? Thank you. Parks and Recreation, Mr. Joel Penton.
And I do have this in writing for you, Rhonda. The department needs volunteers to assist in installing the new safety netting at Smiley Park. We don't know when that will be, or even if we'll have a baseball or softball season this year. We're hoping to begin the project in late April. This is not something anyone's ever done before, so we'll try to get one section done with just employees before we call volunteers, so we'll know how to instruct them. And the second thing is we are still in need of 2 full-time employees for the summer months only. These employees will make minimum wage. They'll cut grass, clean restrooms, empty trash, maintain ball diamonds, and whatever else the Parks Department needs. And that concludes my report.
Any, Jay?
I'm sorry, just to comment on the parks, I have instructed them to continue to collect fees for baseball season. We're continuing on as normal.
Right.
We will refund money if the season, the leagues don't happen. We just want to be in a position that if this thing gets dropped, they'll expect baseball to be 3 days later, and
Yep.
so we're staying with it best we can.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Penn? Thank you, Joel. Finance, Mr. Jeff Egler.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have that then and now for Squire, Patton, and Boggs to be paid.
Okay, motion to approve the then and now. Second by Mr. Callis. Any questions? It's for $9,000. The bond council. Veronica, please call the roll.
Mr. Egler?
Yes.
Mr. Callis?
Yes.
Mr. Penton?
Yes.
Mr. Hellman?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Mr. Davis, on the then and now, $9,000 for the bond council. Yes. Thank you.
And I'd like to have the law director prepare an ordinance for the next council meeting for the non-bargaining wages.
Gotcha. So we officially call that a salary ordinance, right?
Salary ordinance for the service departments and the safety departments.
So it'd be two different ones, okay.
Okay, so
Yeah, thank you.
motion to prepare the salary ordinance for the service, can we put them in one or 2 different ones?
No, they've always been 2 different ones.
Okay, so we need a motion, Mr. Egler, to prepare the salary ordinance for the service department, non-bargaining units.
I'll make that motion
Emergency or not?
Yes.
Yes.
as an emergency.
As an emergency. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Hellman. Please call the roll, Veronica.
Mr. Egler?
Yes.
Mr. Hellman?
Yes.
Mr. Callis?
Yes.
Mr. Penton?
Yes.
And Mr. Davis, salary ordinance for non-bargaining.
Yes.
Okay.
And that would conclude my
Nope,
report.
we need the other one.
What, it's-
We need another salary ordinance for the safety
Yes.
safety on an emergency.
on an emergency?
Yeah.
I so move.
Okay, do I have a second? Mr. Penton? Veronica, please call the roll.
Mr. Egler?
Yes.
Mr. Penton?
Yes.
Mr. Callis?
Yes.
Mr. Hellman?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
And that would conclude my
All
report.
right, any questions for Mr. Egler? Thank you, Jeff. Joel, who's vice chair for judiciary?
I believe that's me.
You?
Yes.
Do you have a report?
No report, Mr.
No
President.
report. Okay, thank you, Mr. Callis. Streets and alleys, Mr. Steve Hellman.
All right, I have 2 this evening. This has already been prepared, 20-03-018, declaring it an emergency. I'd like to make a motion for that.
I'll
Okay.
second.
Is it already?
We have to prepare this tonight, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you need a
A motion to prepare.
motion to prepare a resolution, blah, 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 blah.
As an emergency.
Yeah, you need to say that.
Yeah. A motion to, I want to make a motion to prepare an ordinance as an emergency for the rock salt.
Okay. Motion to prepare a resolution authorizing the safety service director to purchase rock salt from the Ohio Department of Transportation. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Egler. Veronica, please call the roll.
Mr. Hellman?
Yes.
Mr. Egler?
Yes.
Mr. Callis?
Yes.
Mr. Penton?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Mr. Davis.
Yes.
Now, motion to introduce.
Yes, I would like to make a motion to introduce this ordinance before council, 20-03-018.
Okay, motion to introduce, it's actually a resolution,
A resolution.
20-03-018. Do I have a second?
Yep.
Second by Mr. Egler. Veronica, please call the roll.
Mr. Hellman?
Yes.
Mr. Egler?
Yes.
Mr. Callis?
Yes.
Mr. Penton?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
And since this was prepared as an emergency, I'd like to motion the statutory rules be suspended.
Good, motion to suspend statutory rules.
Second.
Second by Mr. Egler. Veronica, please call the roll.
Mr. Hellman?
Yes.
Mr. Egler?
Yes.
Mr. Callis?
Yes.
Mr. Penton?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Mr. Davis, suspend rules?
Yes.
Yes.
And I'd like to make a motion that the resolution number 20-03-018 be passed on its first and final reading.
Okay, motion to pass 20-03-018 on first and final. Second by Mr. Egler. Veronica, please read the resolution and call the roll.
Resolution number 20-03-018, a resolution authorizing the Safety Service Director on behalf of the City of Van Wert to enter into and participate in a contract with the Ohio Department of Transportation for the purchase of sodium chloride rock salt for the 2020-2021 winter season and declaring an emergency. Mr. Hellman?
Yes.
Mr. Egler?
Yes.
Mr. Callis?
Yes.
Mr. Penton?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Mr. Davis, first and final.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, and then I would like to make a motion for the law director to prepare a resolution for 20-03-019
Okay.
to change the loading zones.
All right, so just to be clear, this is, you're asking for an ordinance here,
Right.
and the number is not actually
There yet.
there yet until
Correct.
the law director officially prepares it. So you're asking for an ordinance to change the loading zone to 15-minute parking at the location on North Shannon Street.
Correct.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Yeah.
Second by Mr. Egler. Veronica, please call the roll.
Mr. Hellman?
Yes.
Mr. Egler?
Yes.
Mr. Callis?
Yes.
Mr. Penton?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Yes.
And I would like to make a motion to introduce this ordinance before council.
Yes. Now it has a number, so
And that
you
would
can
be
introduce the ordinance 20-03-019. Second by Mr. Egler.
Mm-hmm.
Veronica, please call the roll.
Mr. Hellman?
Yes.
Mr. Egler?
Yes.
Mr. Callis?
Yes.
Mr. Penton?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Mr. Davis, motion to introduce.
Yes.
Yes.
That
Yes.
is all.
Okay. Any questions for streets and alleys? Thank you, Steve. Mr. Davis, do you have anything to come before council this evening?
I do not.
Okay, so no report from property and equipment. Any questions for property and equipment? Okay, unfinished business will stay as is. Is there any new business to come before council this evening? Hearing none, we do not have a consent agenda. Veronica, please, Mr. Egler, you have a,
I make a motion that ordinance 2002-012 be passed on its third and final reading.
okay, motion to pass ordinance number 20-02-012. This is the permanent appropriations for our budget, be passed on its third and final. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Callis. Are there any questions about this? Veronica, please call the roll.
Want me to read it?
Yeah, I'm sorry, you need to read it, yes. I apologize.
Vote for ordinance number 20-02-012, an ordinance to make permanent appropriations for the current expenses and other expenditures for the city of Van Wert, Ohio, from January 1st, 2020 to December 31st, 2020, and declaring an emergency. Mr. Egler?
Yes.
Mr. Callis?
Yes.
Mr. Penton?
Yes.
Mr. Hellman?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Mr. Davis, vote on the budget?
Yes.
Yes. Did you call Mr. Penton? Okay, I'm sorry. Now you need to read 20-03-019, first vote.
Yes. Oh, there's a vote on it.
Yep. Read the ordinance and call the roll.
Yep, ordinance number 20-03-019, an ordinance changing the space 82 feet north of the intersection of West Main Street and North Shannon Street on the west side of North Shannon Street from a loading zone to 15-minute parking. Mr. Callis.
Yes.
Mr. Penton.
Yes.
Mr. Egler.
Yes.
Mr. Hellman.
Yes.
Mr. Davis.
Mr. Davis, this is the first advisory vote on change, okay. He must have heard you. All right. Any other business to come before council this evening?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Mr. Egler, second by Mr. Hellman. Veronica, please call the roll.
Mr. Egler.
Yes.
Mr. Hellman.
Yes.
Mr. Callis.
Yes.
Mr. Penton.
Yes.
Mr. Davis.
Mr. Davis, motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Yes. All right. Thank you, everybody.